Hey there, vampires, neckbiters, undead, and unholy.
Welcome to episode 32 of What Happens in the Crypt.
Today, we are talking about the 1931 film, Dracula.
This movie was directed and co-produced by Todd Browning from a screenplay written by Garrett Fort. It is based on the 1924 stage play Dracula by Hamilton Dean and John L. Balderston, which in turn is adapted from the 1897.
The 1987 book.
Novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Oh, God.
Want to say his name one more time?
Bram Stoker.
I always want to say Stroker.
I did say it.
This movie was actually released on Valentine's Day in 1931. I guess it is really a love story after all.
A kidnappy love story.
Murdery.
Mm-hmm. A synopsis for this movie is a naive real estate agent succumbs to the will of Count Dracula, and the two head to London where the vampire sleeps in his coffin by day and searches for potential victims by night. As far as trigger warnings go, this is pretty tame. There's honestly not any gore or sexual situations to speak of. It's all alluded to, and I think it's rated PG.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Taglines for this movie include...
The human vampire. He comes from his grave at night, drinks living blood, bestows crimson kisses no woman can resist.
The movie starts with our character Renfield, who is a solicitor traveling to Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania on a business matter.
The first stop that the carriage makes, he tells the driver, like, hey, don't take my stuff down because I'm actually going onward to the castle. And everybody freaks out a little bit.
Yeah, everybody's like, you have to hide at sundown.
Like, the sun's going down, you can't go up there. And he's like, I'm meeting a carriage, like, at midnight.
And everybody's, like, terrified by this.
Mm-hmm. I love this part, too, because when he finally, I think he, like, gives the carriage driver more money to take him up there. When they get there, he, like, throws the bags off the cart before Renfield's even out of the carriage.
No, please, put that back up there.
The driver... He is afraid. Walpurgis night. Good fellow he is. He wants me to ask if you can wait and go on after sunrise.
Well, I'm sorry, but there's a carriage meeting me at Borgo Pass at midnight.
Borgo Pass?
Yes.
Whose carriage?
Count Dracula's.
Count Dracula's?
Yes.
Castle Dracula?
Yes, that's where I'm going.
To the castle?
Yes.
No. You mustn't go there. We people of the mountains believe at the castle there are vampires.
Waiting for him at midnight is Dracula himself.
In a disguise, quote unquote. He basically is just wearing a scarf around his head.
And a little hat or something?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even a disguise. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But on their journey, Renfield looks out the window in horror as he sees the bat.
Yeah, there's no longer a driver, but there's a bat guiding the carriage. It's so good. So, of course, when the carriage gets to the castle, Renfield is feeling a little weird, and he comes out to talk to the driver, and the driver's gone, and the big front door just, like, creaks open of the castle.
Upon Renfield's entry, he sees Dracula already waiting for him, holding a candle.
And this is where that iconic line comes in. It's where, after Dracula introduces himself, he has that classic line where they hear wolves howling outside. And you're going to say it because you have a good Dracula voice.
Listen to them, the children of the night. What music they make.
Perfect. A+.
Thank you.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
And you also see the great spider effects.
Oh yeah, it's a horrifying spider on a wire.
Just dragged up the wall. But you gotta love it.
Dracula pretty much leads Renfield to his room where he's going to stay for the night and they're going to conduct their business and all of this and that. And he gives him some wine and leaves the room, and then Renfield starts to see fog outside.
This is very old wine. I hope you will like it.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
Yeah, they would like talk about, because Dracula wants to buy Carfax Abbey in London, and they talk about that for maybe 10 seconds.
Right.
It's the whole reason he came this whole way.
But it is like midnight or something, so
Yeah.
I think the whole plan was to come stay at the castle.
And shortly after the fog appears, so does a bat.
And Renfield is just so transfixed by this bat, and he ends up opening like is it a door or a window?
The window, the giant window.
It's just the size of a door. He opens the window and lets the fog in.
But also come Dracula's 3 wives.
Right, Renfield like turns around and sees them, and he's like in shock about all of this, and he just faints, collapses. And they're spooky.
They are pretty spooky. I wish they were in it more.
Yeah, me too. But they're in it just enough.
There, yeah. And then Dracula himself shows up and literally waves them away. He doesn't even say anything.
Yeah. I think all the fact that whole scene is silent is really wonderful too. At this point, Renfield is Dracula's familiar, and he's pretty much going insane. But he scheduled this boat to take Dracula to London along with the wives, and they're like in their coffins under the deck.
And this is the next day we're talking. Renfield watches the coffins during the day while Dracula sleeps.
And by the time the boat lands in London, the whole crew has been murdered by Dracula.
And there's this, like, when it pulls up, you see the shadow of, like, the captain draped over the wheel. I almost said steering wheel, and I was like, I don't know about that.
I think it's just a regular wheel.
Just call it a wheel. Mm-hmm. It's a wheel.
And this is my favorite shot of Renfield.
It's one of my favorite shots of any movie ever.
It's so creepy. So whoever was there to get the crew off the boat, they come on and they find all of the bodies, and they hear someone laughing under the deck. And when they open,
weird cackling.
Yeah.
It's so
but when
off-putting.
they open the door, like the hinged door, he's just standing there staring, looking up at them, like completely like covered in the light from the outside. And
it's awesome.
It's spooky.
Terrifying. I would argue that Renfield is more terrifying than Dracula in this
100%.
Why, he's mad. Look at his eyes. Why, the man's gone crazy.
Because Dracula's like got the charm. Renfield's just insane.
He just wants to eat everything.
Yeah.
Every living being and drain it of blood.
Mm-hmm. Of course, though, the people that come on the boat assume that Renfield is the one that's murdered the whole crew. So he gets sent off to Dr. Seward's sanatorium.
Sanatorium?
I always say that word wrong. And Dracula remains undiscovered at this point.
And it also just so happens that the sanitarium, I want to say.
Isn't it sanitarium? Yes. I don't know why it says sanatorium on this. I think it's sanitarium.
I believe it's sanitarium. Let us know if we're wrong.
I don't know.
But anyways, it just so happens to be attached to Dracula's new home. In fact, it is the very next scene where we see Dracula enter a theater. He's just kind of, I love the scene of him just like strolling. Mm-hmm. And he looks so out of place.
Oh, yeah.
And he kills somebody immediately. I forgot about that. Actually, I didn't write that down in the kill count.
He kills like a maid, right?
The woman selling flowers. He instantly just drinks her blood. Bam, on the street.
He's hungry.
Needed a snack before the theater.
It's at the theater, though, that Dracula meets Dr. Seward, who is the one that runs the sanitarium, and his daughter, Mina, who becomes his love interest of the rest of the film.
They're also joined by John Harker, Mina's fiancé, and their friend Lucy Weston.
And it shows, like, the girls later on that night, and Lucy is a little fascinated by Dracula, while Mina is, like, teasing her about it. And when they both go to bed, Dracula appears in Lucy's room and drains her blood.
Drinks her like a Capri Sun.
Oh, wow. I kind of knew you were going to say that at some point during this.
Just drains are dry.
I didn't think it was going to be right here.
Right off rip.
The movie cuts back to Renfield, who is now in the sanitarium, and he is like hoarding the spider when an orderly who we love named Martin he'll like interrupts him and is like, do not eat this spider, you're disgusting, you're a freak.
And takes it from him. He's so upset.
Ruins his whole day.
But Martin is almost like the comedic relief in the movie. His lines are so funny, and his character is basically just to be like, you are all insane.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with all of you people.
And like his accent is really dramatic.
It's like super over the top.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's just like an American, like faking it.
Yeah, I don't know. But he's great. And like he's the one that always comes back to retrieve Renfield when he escapes over and over again.
Please don't, Martin. Oh, Martin, please. Please, Martin. No, Martin. Oh, Martin, please. Here, give it to me now. No, Martin, please. No, Martin. Martin, don't throw my spider away from me. Oh, Martin. No.
Ain't you ashamed now? Ain't you? Spiders now, is it? Flies ain't good enough.
Flies? Poor, puny things. Who wants to eat flies?
You do, ya loony.
Not when I can get nice, fat spiders.
All right. Have it your own way.
But anyways, from here, we meet Dr. Van Helsing.
Professor. Oh. Hold on. Professor. I adjusted my glasses that time as I said it.
Oh, wow. Anyways, and he is there. How did he even get involved? I don't remember.
They just call him.
Okay.
Because basically, they're like, it's a sanitarium. They're used to people being insane. But most people don't want to drink blood all the time.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey. I mean, they obviously don't show it, but they're like, hey, this guy's really weird. But Van Helsing takes a sample of Renfield's blood and discovers that he is not just a ordinary human or insane person.
Renfield is just obsessively talking about vampires. He says that he hears howling at night and that it's his master trying to contact him. And Van Helsing, just as like a little trick, like shoves some wolfsbane in his face. And Renfield has such a severe reaction to it that he knows that he's sensitive to that because that's what they use to protect themselves from vampires.
That same night.
I feel like this whole story takes place over a week, pretty much.
Yeah, it's not that long of a story.
Yeah.
Either way, Dracula begins to visit Mina in her sleep.
And it's when he starts visiting her that he bites her for the first time.
And she just thinks she's having, like, a nightmare.
Right, and Professor Van Helsing.
Thank you. Wait, you have to adjust your glasses as you say Professor. Thank you.
Okay.
Professor.
Wow. Okay. Happens to be there when Mina is telling her fiancé about this dream that she had, how horrible it was.
And it's so perfectly timed. She's talking about the dream. And then they're like, but who was it? Who did you see in your dream? And then the maid comes in and she's like, Dracula has arrived.
Yeah, right.
And he walks into the room. There's this cool accidental discovery because, it's the early 1900s. So, of course, they're going to have a cigar. And they, I think it's, Harker opens a cigar box and it has a mirror and they see that Dracula has no reflection. And now Van Helsing knows that Dracula is the vampire who has been causing all these deaths and mishaps. Yes.
Yeah. Mishaps. Right. It shows later in the night Mina is like basically been hypnotized by Dracula and she leaves her room and runs to him in the garden where he ends up biting her again.
There's this weird scene where Lucy is just like walking through the woods and you hear children laughing and the newspapers report that there's a woman in white luring children from the park and biting them.
It is creepy.
That's terrifying.
Because like it seemed like she was just dead and then it's like, oh no, she's actually out there doing vampire stuff.
Mr. Harker wants to take Mina away from London, but basically her dad and Van Helsing say if you take her, she will die. Mm-hmm. Dracula will not stop.
Right, and so she's left in the care of Van Helsing and a nurse while they try to take care of this.
As an added precaution, Van Helsing puts a wolfsbane necklace around her to stop Dracula from coming back. However, that doesn't last very long.
Right.
Mina begins to scream and complain that this vile weed, this horrible plant, is stinking up her room and she can't stand it. Harker himself hears the screams and he runs to her room, and she's kind of like acting more energetic, and she's being very strange, but seems to be in good spirits. And they go out to the balcony and a bat flies overhead, and she's kind of like listening to the bat, but he's talking to her, and she is mostly listening.
Oh, yeah. Doesn't she mumble, like, yes, master, or something?
Not master, but she's like, okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Mm-hmm. She's like, oh, I didn't say anything. And then she tries to bite his neck.
Right, and Van Helsing is there, and he pulls out a crucifix, and she screams because, of course, the sight of it is hurting her.
And, of course, at this point, Renfield has escaped again.
Yeah, shocker.
And I don't
even know how he escapes. He just goes and, comes and goes.
It's just Dracula.
Yeah.
Doing it, because they make a comment that the steel bars had been... Martin says the bars had been twisted like cheese.
That was really good. I love that part, too, when they call and they're like, hey, he's here again. He's like, oh, God damn it. Whatever he says. Just like, again.
Before they take Renfield back once again, he has this disturbing monologue about how his master has promised him the blood of 1,000, maybe millions of rats. All this blood just for him.
Yeah. He's the best actor in the whole movie.
He is
Dwight Fry.
Crazy.
He's so good.
Came and stood below my window in the moonlight. And he promised me things. Not in words, but by doing them.
Doing them?
By making them happen. A red mist spread over the lawn, coming on like a flame of fire. And then he parted it, and I could see that there were thousands of rats with their eyes blazing red, like his, only smaller. And then he held up his hand, and they all stopped. And I thought he seemed to be saying, rats, 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 thousands, millions of them, all red blood. All these will I give you, if you will obey me.
Dracula comes back and talks to Van Helsing, telling him that Mina is his and that Van Helsing should just go home. And once again, Van Helsing pulls out a crucifix and forces Dracula to leave.
But there is a great moment where Dracula tries to hypnotize Van Helsing. And Dracula is like, you are strong of will. And he cannot actually hypnotize him.
Right.
Now that you have learned what you have learned, it would be well for you to return to your own country.
I prefer to remain and protect those whom you would destroy.
You are too late. My blood now flows through her veins. She will live through the centuries to come, as I have lived.
Dracula shows up at the window and hypnotizes the nurse to remove the wolfsbane from Mina's neck and open the windows.
Van Helsing and Harker happen to see Renfield heading for Carfax Abbey, because at this point they don't know where Dracula is going.
Mm-hmm. When Harker calls to Mina, Dracula thinks that Renfield has, betrayed him and very sadly squashes him pretty much.
Throws him down those stairs.
He picks him up and, strangles him and throws him down the stairs.
Knowing that Dracula must sleep during the day, Van Helsing and Harker basically chase Dracula, and find him in his coffin.
We don't see it, but we do know that Van Helsing has a stake, and that
He like makes it then and there.
Yeah. And then, like, off camera, we hear, like, him hit something, and Mina returns to normal.
We actually hear Dracula, like, ooh.
Oh. I guess so.
He hears his agony.
Yeah.
And Van Helsing states that he is dead forever. But Mina does turn back to normal. For this movie, like we said, we're going to give you even more behind the scenes than normal. We're going to start off by telling you a bit of Bela Lugosi's background. Lugosi, the youngest of 4 children, was born in, and I'm prefacing this now, some of the names here are difficult, and I am trying my best. Lugosi, the youngest of 4 children, was born Bela Ferenc Dezo Blasco in Lugos, Hungary. He was born to Hungarian father Istvan Blasco, a banker, and Serbian mother Paula de Vajnic.
Sounds right.
Bela later changed his last name based on the name of his hometown. Because he just added an I. Mm-hmm. So Lugosi. Mm-hmm. It sounds real good, though.
It does.
It's crazy to think about how we're talking, Bela Lugosi was actually born in 1882. So when he joined the army, he actually fought in World War I. During World War I, he actually served as an infantryman in the Austro-Hungarian army from 1914 to 1916, actually rising the ranks and became a lieutenant. He was awarded a medal for wounds that he suffered while serving on the Russian front.
After playing small parts on the stage in his native Hungary, Lugosi gained his first role in a film in 1917. He ultimately had to leave the country after the failed Hungarian Communist Revolution of 1919 because of his socialist activism. He acted in several films in Germany before arriving in the United States as a seaman on a merchant ship.
On his arrival in America, the 6'1", 180-pound Lugosi worked for some time as a laborer and eventually entered the theater in New York City's Hungarian immigrant colony. He actually did many Hungarian plays before breaking out into his first English Broadway play, The Red Poppy, in 1922. 3 more parts came in 1925 and 1926, including a 5-month run in the comedy fantasy The Devil in the Cheese.
I want to know what this is really bad. The Devil in the Cheese. Do you think he played the devil or the cheese?
I don't know. Or is it a devil made of cheese?
I don't know.
I hope it's a devil made of cheese.
I'm going to guess it's a devil versus a hunk of cheese, and that Lugosi played the cheese.
In 1925, Lugosi appeared as an Arab sheik in Arabesque, which premiered in Buffalo, New York at the Tech Theater before moving to Broadway. His first American film role was in the melodrama The Silent Command in 1923. He was in several more silent roles, followed by villains and continental types. Basically, he was typecast for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Finally, though, Lugosi was approached in the summer of 1927 to star in a Broadway theater production of Dracula. Lugosi actually went on to do 261 performances in the play. And actually, one of the main reasons he got the role in the film was because he happened to be in L.A. the time that they were looking for somebody to play Dracula. Originally, they wanted to go with someone else.
Lon Chaney, who died right before they would have, started. When Bela Lugosi died in 1956, he was buried in one of his Dracula capes as he had requested, which I thought was so sweet. Mm-hmm. Because there's definitely stuff out there saying that he kind of resented the fame that Dracula gave him and that he didn't reprise the role very often, I think only twice. And so it's funny that in the end he just embraced it and was like, if I'm going back in a coffin, it better be as Dracula. Mm-hmm. Dwight Fry, who played Renfield, was born in Kansas and studied for a career in music and first appeared as a concert pianist before he ended up going to the stage. He was nicknamed the Man with the 1,000-Watt Stare and the Man of 1,000 Deaths.
Wow.
Which I love both of those. Yeah. So accurate. He had a notable theatrical career in the 1920s, moving from juvenile parts to leads before entering film. All too soon, he was essentially typecast, playing a lackluster array of crazies, spies, red herrings, and bit parts, which was very frustrating after a successful Broadway career. He also plays Fitz in Frankenstein. So after the success of Frankenstein and, of course, Dracula, he was very quickly, like, set to be, like, the sidekick guy as he kind of moved forward in his career. In 1971, the Alice Cooper group, being greatly inspired by Fry's Renfield character, further immortalized him in their song The Ballad of Dwight Fry. The nearly 7-minute conceptual composition appears on their Love It to Death album.
I love that song.
I do too.
It's so good.
We love Alice Cooper.
So we're going to play a little, like, bit of it here.
Yeah.
Now.
Sadly, though, Dwight Fry hid a heart condition from friends and family that caused him to have a heart attack on a bus in Hollywood at the age of 44. The large, expansive sets built for the Transylvania Castle and Carfax Abbey remained standing after filming was completed and were used by Universal Pictures for many other movies for over a decade.
This movie was completed for a total cost of $341,000, which was under the original estimate of $355,000.
Dracula never once blinks his eyes, an effect that enhances the undead character's otherworldly aura. Bela Lugosi's famous menacing stare. However, upon watching this movie twice, I did find one moment where he blinks, but
It's as he, like, turns
he's
away.
turning his head away. So I think that this is still a fair thing to say.
It definitely adds a lot to it. How many times do you think that he or somebody said, cut, or we gotta redo it, because he blinked?
But I mean, that wasn't in the script. That was him doing that, Bela Lugosi.
Shoot.
So it's like, he must have just been determined to do it every
He
time.
must have wet eyes.
What a thing to say.
But I know he was also known to walk around on set to hype himself up. Like, he would just say, I'm Dracula, I'm Dracula,
really
I'm
funny.
Dracula. Like, he did stuff like that. In Dracula's tomb? Crypt? I don't really know what to call it. Dirty basement?
Yeah.
I think all of them are accurate. You will see Jerusalem crickets, which also you might notice from Halloween 3.
Yeah, that was like the puzzle that took me so long to figure out what that was.
But you'll also see possums and armadillos. Armadillos had occasionally been seen digging in graveyards, which led to the mistaken belief that they would dig their way into coffins and eat the cadavers.
Yeah, when we sat down to watch this and it opens up like his the shot where you see his coffin and there's armadillos, I was like, why the fuck are there armadillos? Like, it's so random. But I didn't know that that was a thing. The opening music to this film is from Act 2 of Swan Lake.
Cinematographer Carl Frond achieved the effect of Dracula's hypnotic stare by aiming 2 pencil spotlights into Bela Lugosi's eyes.
Which, once you know that, you can see them. Like, you can see the points of light, but like without knowing that, it just looks really weird.
It adds to it for sure. But even that makes him not blinking even more impressive.
Yeah, he's literally getting a light shined in his eye.
Staring into those 2 lights. Huh. Because it had to be bright as fuck.
Yeah, talented.
Yeah.
A Spanish version of Dracula using the same exact set and costumes was filmed at night, starring
Carlos Vilarias, Lupita Tovar, Barry Norton, and Pablo Alvarez Rubio.
as the Spanish cast.
And sorry to interrupt one more time. And Eduardo Rosamena played Van Helsing.
Oh, cool. So they filmed at night using the same costumes, the same set, the same everything, while the Bela Lugosi movie was shot during the day, which this is one of the only movies I've ever heard of this happening.
Yeah, I've never even heard of this happening before. And I'm sure it has happened more than you think, but it's just something you don't really find out. I think the only reason... Why did we even find out?
Because of the Blu-ray.
Yeah. The Blu-ray we have of this actually has the Spanish version. And it was funny, we were going scene by scene, and we're like, this is... shot for shot.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because, like, it has, like, that same shot where Renfield walks in, Dracula's standing there with a candle, walks into the web, the spider goes up the wall. It's, like, exactly the same.
Yeah, but when we were clicking through it, it deviated a little bit in, like, the characters. Like, the Spanish Renfield is definitely a lot more manic than the one we have in the American version. Yeah.
His laugh is, like, they basically said, laugh as loudly and
crazily
as you can.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
In the boat scene, so we didn't watch the full Spanish one, but we watched parts of it. And the part on the boat includes this whole thing where
it's way longer.
It's way longer, where the crewmates catch Renfield, like, and he's sitting with a bunch of rats, like, all around him,
and he's just laughing.
Yeah, it's really creepy.
And there's also a lot more rats.
Yeah. Which is just funny to think about, like, why did they want more rats in that one? They only had the rats at night? What happened?
During the Spanish one, there's that little possum that falls off the coffin.
Oh, yeah. He does. He takes a little tumble.
I hope that possum was okay.
Right in the beginning. In the American version, of course, you can see some of the wires on the bats if you look really hard when they're flapping their wings. But also, I guess, to keep the armadillos in the area that they wanted them to be, they were on leashes, like dog leashes, which in watching it recently I didn't notice. But next time we watch it, I'm going to try to find it, because I guess in some scenes you can see the leashes on the armadillos.
As far as folklore goes, vampires are interesting because there's not just one original vampire.
Yeah, and from all over the world, they have existed in culture with different rules, but all like the same type of idea. They all basically drink blood to survive, but some of them are undead, some of them are alive, some of them are repelled by garlic, some of them are not. It's all different.
Yeah, and we're talking all over Europe, UK, even China has one. For example, Chinese vampires differ. I'm doing my best with the names. They're referred to as jiangshi, and they are known for hopping, but they drink your ki. So they come out at night and drink your life force until you no longer can live. And one of their, weaknesses or ways to stop one if you come across one is you spill rice in front of it, and it must count every single grain before it can come at you.
I have heard that before, the rice thing. There's also a ton of different ways to decide that someone is a vampire. Obviously, in Dracula, they do the mirror trick. They also do the wolf's bane as two ways of confirming it.
But people were literally terrified that, oh, your father just died. Well, now we need to make sure he's not a vampire. We need to make sure he's not coming back.
In Slavic and Chinese traditions, any corpse that was jumped over by an animal, particularly a dog or a cat, was feared to become one of the undead. So, like in, what is it with Radu? What is that movie called? Subspecies. There's that whole festival where they have a horse marching through the cemetery, and whichever one it jumps over, they dig the body up to stake it through the heart. This one I thought was really interesting too, which I had not heard of before, was another method that they would use to determine if someone's body was becoming a vampire was they would lead a virgin boy through a graveyard or church grounds on a virgin stallion, and the horse would balk at the grave in question. And generally a black horse was required.
And in Albania, it was supposed to be white. What a weird thing.
Yeah.
How are you going to ask if that horse is a virgin?
It's do they just choose a random boy every night to do this? How do they do that? In this movie, too, it's funny, it follows most of the classic ones, I think, needing his own dirt from where he came from. But also, he doesn't need to be invited in, it doesn't seem.
No.
He can kind of do what he wants.
Yeah, that's not that's not one of the traditional ones. The other thing we have to talk about this movie, of course, is the original novel written by Bram Stoker. Stoker's book Dracula came out 123 years ago. Before writing Dracula, Stoker spent 7 years researching European folklore and stories of vampires, being most influenced by Emily Gerard's 1885 essay, Transylvania Superstitions. Band name. That's a good band name.
Transylvanian Superstitions.
That's a good band name. Somebody do it. Go. But it includes content about a vampire myth. An interesting note I found was that Stoker himself never went to Transylvania or Hungary, where the vampire was known to be.
Where did he live when he wrote this?
England.
Okay.
which is weird. He's an Irish guy.
Yeah.
The Lyceum Theatre in the West End, I don't know what that means, but it's a place, where Stoker worked between 1878 and 1899, was headed by actor-manager Henry Irving, who was Stoker's real-life inspiration for Dracula's mannerisms, and Stoker hoped that he would play Dracula in a stage version, but Irving never did agree to do it. Dracula's sweeping gestures and gentlemanly mannerisms drew their living embodiment from Irving, which is, I guess, how you write, because this guy just
You write what
was
you know.
like him. But it's interesting that before Stoker ever released this book, he was like, I want this to be a play. Mm-hmm. The original title was The Dead Undead.
So silly.
And then it was changed to simply The Undead, up until only a few weeks before publication. Count Dracula's original name was Count Vampire.
Good job.
But luckily, Stoker became fascinated with Vlad the Impaler, which eventually led to him changing the name to Dracula. The name Dracula comes from Vlad the Impaler. We actually talked about this extensively in our subspecies episode. That was our very first episode, and you should go check that out. But I'll do a brief little talk about it right here. Vlad the Impaler, his real name was Vlad Dracula, but it was spelled Lea. But that was like the Hungarian way. So in Stoker's novel, it's just Dracula. But he was Vlad Dracula III of Wallachia. The family took the name Dracul after being invited into the Order of the Dragon in 1431. In the old Romanian language, the word Dracul means the dragon, and Dracula meant son of the dragon.
I love it.
Stoker's fascination with Vlad comes from the fact that he was known to pierce his enemies alive onto large wooden pikes. It was rumored that he would drink the blood that flowed down, which is fucking scary.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
That is terrifying. And he was known to do it with as many enemy soldiers as he could. Mm-hmm. So he would literally build walls of screaming, dying people. What
a way to go.
Yeah, it would take you hours to die that way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you gotta get the inspiration there. That was a good call. Good. Also good call to not to name him Count Vampire.
Why?
Dracula's way cooler.
I guess.
Also, because then it would have been called... Imagine watching the movie, The Undead.
The Dead Undead.
The Dead Undead.
God, you are good at that voice. I don't think you've ever done that before until today.
I just practiced it in my car for hours like an insane person.
Perfect.
That's how I prep for D&D as well. I just sit alone and do voices, and I'm like, okay, this was pretty cool. Actually, the Dracula one, I didn't like. I did not rehearse it beforehand. It just it kind of happened.
As far as death counts go for this movie, I'm pretty sure there's 3.
Nope, that's actually
4.
Yeah. No, remember? Yeah, there's the flower girl, her friend. You see the captain, Dracula himself. Others that you don't see.
All right, there's a couple deaths. It's a little murky.
I'm always like, okay, we're going to keep track. I'm going to keep count. But then I just watched the movie.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of the movie and I was just like, damn it, I didn't keep count.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard sometimes. And then it's like, oh, this whole ship got murdered. And it's like, how many people was that possibly?
They never said. So, because, we never count the off-screen deaths. Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there's a couple deaths.
I think it's 4.
All right. Fair.
This is one of my favorite monster movies of all time. Renfield and Dracula are such a creepy and terrifying gruesome twosome. One of my favorite scenes of any movie ever, as I said before, will always be Renfield at the bottom of the boat stairs. If you have not watched this movie, go watch it for that scene alone. And if you have seen it, watch it again.
Yeah, this one is really great. It definitely, all the Universal Monsters ones seem to hold up, like, as far as just, like, it still captures you from beginning to end. And, I haven't seen any of the other Dracula ones, so that's coming up soon.
Buy another Blu-ray box set. You can watch this on iTunes or Amazon Prime. Or, like us, for Christmas I got you the, what was it called? The
Monsters
Universal
Collection.
Monster Collection. And that came with like this little booklet with a ton of cool behind-the-scenes stuff. And all the DVDs have a lot of cool stuff. Like we said, we got to watch the Spanish version of Dracula.
Yeah, and on the Dracula disc, there was also 2 little, like, docu specials, but both of them were just kind of, like, information that we had already found, but they were, like, well done. They were cool.
Yeah, and one of them is headed by the niece of the Carl... I'm sorry, names.
Lemmy? The guy that came up with Universal.
The guy who started Universal.
Yes.
His niece.
And she's actually in Dracula as
Yes.
well. She's the girl at the very beginning who's reading the book on the carriage.
She's the first line.
But it's very funny in the little documentary short that's on the disc. She is like sitting in this like throne next to like a candelabra, and she's old. It's really cute.
For our next episode, we will be talking about the 2015 horror comedy, The Final Girls.
This one hit me in the feelings really, really hard. And they did a lot of cool effects to make the story awesome, so stay tuned.
Yeah, I had never seen this movie until we watched it like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, holy shit, this movie's great.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking up stuff and I'm like, oh, they referenced this. They referenced this. It's such a good... It does a lot of the same things as, what was that, Cabin in the Woods? Mm-hmm. Where, you know, they make fun of the tropes, and it's just so good, though. It's so well done.
And I liked it, and I just thought it was good and funny up until we find out that the story is based off of the director's real life. And then it made me really sad.
Yeah.
And I couldn't recover from that.
The director actually like wrote this story to help him cope with things that happened in his real life.
Which we'll talk about.
Which we will talk about in depth.
I'll try and not cry.
Stay tuned.